welfare of police officers. I will consult with the National Police Service Commission and also to engage the Salaries and Remunerations Commission on the issues of house allowance so that our men and women in uniform can live in decent and affordable houses in our neighborhoods. I also want to ensure that National Police Service Referral Hospital is constructed and be operational as soon as possible.
Sounds like a pretty good plan from the incoming Inspector General of Police. So looking at his entry, we're doing that with Samson Cherargei, he's Senator Nandi County. We also have Peter Kiama, who's Executive Director at IMLU. Gentlemen, thank you for staying with us. Mheshimiwa Cherargei, so first of all, one of his entry is gaining the public trust. So the other one, he cannot, even if he gains the public trust, he will not be able to get anywhere without the support of the policemen and women out there. And that brings me to the issue of welfare of police. And we have talked about this as a country for years. So where does it begin from? Because this has to be sorted one way or another, even if it's baby steps then.
I agree. Police do a lot. They maintain law and order as provided by the law. They ensure we are safe with our property. In fact, today we had, because the regional DCI was here today, more than 5 police officers since the beginning of the year or some span have been killed in the line of duty. I want to agree it's a big challenge, and these are people who also we should be discussing about risk allowances. We should be discussing on their welfare. We should be discussing on their house allowance. And I think as a country, those were the challenges that the police also need a listening ear. When you go to issues of house allowances, there is a difference between house allowances they give in Nairobi, Mombasa and Kisumu. They should also consider police that live maybe in Nairobi, because the last time we interacted with some of the police officers, especially in prison service, most of them are forced to live in slum areas. And these are the people who fight the gangs during the day or during at night, and yet they live with them, so you can imagine the exposure they are. So I agree on the issue of police house allowances. The new IG has a big task ahead. He needs to bring the morale of police officers back. He needs to build on their confidence and the welfare, so that at the end of the day, the police can have that trust, can have that morale, can have that strength to ensure they get that going. Secondly, Linda, what I want to say is that the police still has challenges. When we visited prisons across the coast region, because that was part of our tour here, we realized that most of the prisoners, the remandees and convicts, there has been a weak link between the judiciary and the prisons and the police. So we hope that relationship will improve, because one of the main complaints and the challenges that most of the prisoners, most of the convicts and the remandees has is that police report, those police statements that they need. So I hope Mr. Mutyambai, the new IG, will build a relationship with the judiciary, will build a relationship so that with the prison department, so that we can see how, in as much as the police maintain law and order, we must also see how we can ensure that the reintegration of some of these challenges, especially with petty offenders in our prisons, do not hamper the reforms that we see in police. And I think the issue of police has come a long way since the time of when the reports, the Waki report, the curricular report, especially after post-election violence. And I have a feeling that if the police welfare will be looked into it, the police will not be depressed, because you have seen police officers, Linda, that most of them are forced to kill their spouses. They have killed themselves because of the stress, because they risk their lives for all of us. Sometimes they are stressed up to a particular level until they kill their spouses, they kill themselves. And I think there is a silent problem that is within the police service. I hope they will even start counseling. I've heard him, he wants to build a referral hospital for the police officers. They need to look at their police circle. Even at the Big Four agenda, finally, Linda, on the Big Four agenda, one of the president's aspects is the housing. I would see the IG should partner with the president, especially on housing, where, for example, the prison department, since it's very sensitive, some of the essential officers must be hosted within the police lines and within the prison department, so that we don't allow them to live very far. or because of the allowance that is not enough, they can't get affordable housing. And I think that is some of the challenges that I expect the IG would be the top priority in terms of improving the welfare of police officers.
Yeah, I've seen some of the houses that police officers stay in, especially the ones in prisons, and trust me, it's not a funny story to tell. And while you're talking about the issue of welfare of the police and the fact that now they are being given housing allowance, I do know that junior officers in Nairobi were just saying that they're given, what, 9,500. I mean, where do you get a house of 9,500?
And you can't get a decent house. You can't get a decent house.
Yeah.
They will be forced to live in the slums again, where it is dangerous for them.
Mr. Kiama, how does he start, or where does he begin to improve the welfare of the police? I know the housing issue has been brought up. What else?
Yeah, Linda, remember that transformation of the National Police Service cannot be done in silos. That you have welfare on one side as a standalone, and then you have partnerships as a standalone. It comes as a package. And therefore, if you look, for a good example is the new policy of allowance-based housing of police officers, as opposed to provision-based housing, where the government has tried to provide houses, but that is an unachievable target. We cannot be able to house all our police officers. We've tried for the last 55 years. We haven't achieved that, and it's not achievable at all. So the way to go is allowance-based housing, and rationalize the allowances in line with the socio-economic situations across the country. But also link the provision, the allowance-based housing policy to community policing, so that the IG also leads from the front with his commanders on the ground to create awareness among communities on the need to embrace officers who begin to join us and live with us. Because remember, police officers is also a creation of the Constitution, and they are civilians. They are not armed forces. And therefore, they're supposed to live within communities and work with communities to look for solutions to safety and security concerns. Now, but the other area I think I would like to mention is their psychological welfare. And I'm happy that the National Police Service has already begun to establish a counseling unit and a counseling program across the country, where officers, for example, as the Senator has said, if officers go to operational areas, facing armed criminal gangs, and they are redeployed back to, patrol the streets, they need to be debriefed before they patrol the streets again, because they have already encountered traumatizing experiences.
Yeah,
and therefore, they do need to, actually, that needs to be a compulsory process, where after an operation, you subject yourself to psychological debriefing to prepare yourself for ordinary duties once again. So I'm happy that the mental health program is being launched within the police service to take care of that. However, we also have to remember that managing police officers must be looked into as managing professionals. As long as we continue looking at police officers as non-professionals, then we'll never achieve the full gamut of taking care of police welfare, because it comes as a huge area. And what has happened, for example, is that for many years we have seen various supervisors, either OCPDs or county commanders, who do not go to supervise the rank and file of the police service. Officers, most of them very, very young, who face very traumatizing experiences, very challenging situations, and who need to be mentored and coached all through their career. That is lacking in a big way across the country. So one of the areas that the new Inspector General has to look into is the mentorship and coaching of young officers and the rank and file across the board by the county commanders, the sub-county commanders, the ward commanders who are formerly OCSs, all the way to the top, that we have a clear supervision system, properly documented as a comprehensive human resource management process, which is also supported by the National Police Service Commission.
Okay. Yeah. The new Inspector General Mutyambai rose All right, hold on. So the new Inspector General Mutyambai rose through the ranks since joining the police service in 1991 until 1999 when he left at the rank of Superintendent of Police to join NIS. So this is a man who's gone through the ranks. He understands the frustrations that these policemen and women go through. He understands the challenges that they go through. And the reason why I asked specifically what is in the interest of the new Inspector General is because, one, if you don't address their welfare, and if you do not address public trust, then there's nowhere he's going to go as the Inspector General of Police. Which brings me to the next issue that he also spoke about, the issue of corruption. And there's been an argument that if you pay your policemen and women well, and you take care of their welfare as we are talking about, then you will not have the issue of corruption cropping up in the police service. Senator, Kenya Police has been touted as corrupt in the region. And that is one thing that Mutyambai has to deal with. So how does he address this vis-a-vis the welfare that we're talking about? How does he get to balance these two?
I think I agree with you that the issue of corruption is a problem, and I'm happy that we're having a national discourse on how to fight it. Secondly, I'm happy that Mr. Mutyambai has noted in this inaugural speech by noting that he will be at the forefront in the fight against corruption, especially within and without the police service. Of course, there are many reports and indexes and statistics that have shown police department, especially the traffic, has been of the chronic perpetrators of corruption. I think what Mutyambai needs to do is to ensure he partners with the ethics and anti-corruption, which the Constitution has given its mandate to fight corruption. Also, of course, DCI being one of the departments that he has. I think there's police internal affairs. They have a unit within the police internal affairs, the police disciplinary. Those are some of the mechanisms that if he strengthens within the police itself, such as police internal affairs, the DCI, and also partnering with ethics and anti-corruption, also having a coordination with the DPP. You have to note at this point that today, when you look at Kenya National Commission on Human Rights and the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, they were complaining a situation where they're investigating police, especially on the aspect of extrajudicial or police brutality or corruption. They always hit a dead end. So I hope the new police will be able to bring in IPOA, will be able to bring in Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, because police, as we have said at the beginning of this program, Linda, is that they are not being trusted by the public. So most of the people will report to Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. They will report to other agencies within the government. So I wish
but Senator, that has been happening.
He would engage, he will have a forum. Yeah, it has been happening, but I think now, you need goodwill from the office, especially if he makes it a personal commitment that he wants to fight corruption. It will be easy, because at least I agree, the police, kitu kidogo culture, and my worry, Linda, is that in this country, some rogue police officers, I don't want to say all police officers, because there are police officers who are good. There are some police who have felt the rogue police officers, that when they get you in an awkward situation, or they just want to be mischievous, they have a right that you have to part with something. You have to part with kidogo. So it has to start with the police by improving on the values, by doing what we have agreed on the improvement of welfare, by ensuring that we listen them, by also talking to the SRC so that some of their remuneration, their welfare will be looked into. If we look on those aspects, I can assure you the corruption within police service and even without police services, and I know finally, Linda, corruption will not happen on the police side. There must be somebody who is giving out that money, that bribe. And therefore, we must look also how we can change our values as a society, because even if the police change and us still give bribes, then it becomes a big challenge.
I had a conversation with a police woman a couple of weeks ago, and she was telling me, Linda, I earn, less than 30,000 shillings. I have 3 children. They still have to go to school. I need to make sure they eat. What will you do with 30,000? And that is minus, and she was telling me she had taken a couple of loans, so at the end of the day, she ends up with 5,000 shillings. So where do we begin from? if we don't address the issue of their welfare, then we are not even having a conversation as a country. Mr. Kiama, you get the final word in this conversation.
Issue of corruption, Linda, it's systemic within the police service. We do need to see the Inspector General deal with it as a criminal offense and not be subjected to blackmail, because I'm not convinced that corruption is a factor of poverty. We have so many people who live in poverty, but they're not corrupt and they're not thieves. So stealing and corruption is not necessarily a factor of poverty or a factor of low earnings. I do not believe so. I do empathize with the National Police Service officers who I do believe deserve more than they're getting. But I would like to run away from being subjected to blackmail, that as long as you pay us poorly, we'll continue extorting and stealing and killing people.
The difference between them and thousands of Kenyans out there is that they have powers and privileges. They can stop you along the road and ask you 1,001 questions. Yeah. These are people who, you find them on the wrong side of the day. I mean, you're going to get in trouble. So these are people with powers. That is one thing we have to take in mind. I do agree with that, yes. But that is no excuse for them to misuse the powers they have. They are misusing it. Sorry? They are misusing it. Yes, they are, and therefore they render themselves as criminals when they misuse the powers given to them by the Constitution and the law. So I do agree and I empathize with their situation, but that should not lead them to break the law, because they're the law enforcers. They should be at the forefront. And so as we continue to work on their welfare, we should also see a transformation of the National Police Service as an institution that begins to clearly indicate that they do subject themselves to zero tolerance on corruption, zero tolerance on extrajudicial executions, zero tolerance on extortion, and also zero tolerance on mismanaging the officers by the commanders. We have to hold each and every commander within the police service to account for the officers who serve under him or her. Because if we do not do that, then we continue encouraging a situation where we mismanage, we mistreat police officers. So we do need to hold the commanders to account, and the buck stops at the IG's desk to ensure that we professionally manage and support the police officers, but at the same time hold them to account when they break the law or when they violate human rights. Okay, so finally, before I let you go, I have a minute or so. Kiama, let me begin with you. What is the one thing that the outgoing Inspector General failed to achieve that this Inspector General absolutely must achieve? Dealing with extrajudicial killings. Okay. I think that's an area that we have handled with kid gloves. He needs to take it head on from day one. And so we are watching that space in the first 100 days to see the measures it puts in place to ensure that we deal with this once and for all. Senator, final word as you let it go.
Thank you for having me. I think we have discussed a wide range of issues. IG Mutyambai has his full tray, but we want to thank IG Boynet. He was a calm and firm, but at least when he was in office there was lull, and at least there was some few here and there reforms. The police reforms are far from over. The challenge is on Mutyambai to ensure the police service becomes police service as per the name, but not doesn't fall back to the police force, and impunity must be fought. We want to see the issues of extrajudicial, zero tolerance on extrajudicial, zero tolerance on forced disappearance, zero tolerance on corruption, and we want to see a more re-energized, motivated police service. I think we still give him time. The jury is out and it will judge him when time comes. Yeah, he's just getting started. Let's see how that will play out. A very big thank you, Samson Cherargei, Senator, the County of Nandi. A big thank you as well to Kipchumba Murkomen, Senator Elgeyo Marakwet, who spoke to our lead reporter, Sophia Wanuna, and a big thank you as well to Peter Kiama, who's the Executive Director in Blue. I told you at some point during this show that the Inspector General of Police, the new one, Mutyambai, just given assurance to Kenyans on what they can expect from his tenure. Listen in as we wrap up this show, and thank you for watching The Big Story. I'm Linda Ogutu.
I want to affirm my commitment in ensuring your security and safety is granted. I appeal to you to partner with us to achieve this. I call upon all of us to uphold the Constitution and the rule of law. Under my leadership, I will endeavor to make sure all police officers respect human rights and fundamental freedom as enshrined in the Constitution of Kenya. But equally, remind all of us that police officers have the rights too, which must be respected. I will stand by officers who discharge their duties firmly and fairly, without fear, favor, or ill will, but will equally deal with those who abuse police powers and privileges.